Hi, everybody. I want to talk to you, family and friends of inmates, today about a very serious issue and problem you not only need to be aware of, but you need to arm yourself with the correct documentation for the benefit of the inmate and yourself. I'm going to be using an article that was forwarded to me about DOCs looking for ways to cut costs on burying deceased inmates. The article is specific to the state of Missouri and the Missouri DOC. But what I have to say doesn't apply to any one DOC. It applies to all of them in every state. And the way I'm going to handle this today is to read to you statements made in this article by designating them as such by statement 1, 2, and 3, etc., followed by my comments. So let's get started. Statement 1. An ever-growing and ever-aging inmate population means more Missouri prisoners are likely to die behind bars in the coming years. Against that backdrop, the Missouri DOC is seeking bids from funeral homes across the state in a search for the best deal on burial and cremation services for inmates. This practice isn't anything new. I want you to substitute the state of Missouri for the state that you live in, because all of what I'm getting ready to say today applies to your state and applies to you individually. It's not exclusive to the state of Missouri. DOCs contract with area funeral home and cremation services all the time. It's business. It's not a new practice, nor is it new that the inmate population may or may not increase. Whether they increase or decrease isn't the issue either. For DOCs, the issue is this: what is the cheapest way we can dispose of an inmate body if there is no family, or the family refuses outright to claim the body, or the family can't afford to bury or cremate the deceased inmate? Now, I want to zero in on this issue and dissect it for you. First, if an inmate has no family member on the outside, more oftentimes than not, the DOC is going to keep control of that body. And what I mean by that is this: there will be no question that the DOCs will bury, cremate, or dispose of the body in some way. If, however, that inmate prior to death designated in a last will what he wanted done with his remains upon death and filed that document with someone on the outside, DOCs must honor that request and wish. Secondly, if family members refuse outright to claim the body, the DOC retains control of that body and can dispose of that inmate any way they see fit. Families that refuse outright to claim bodies fall into two categories. The first categories are those family members that actually do exist somewhere, but have not kept in touch with the inmate and have written him or her off. These are the families that don't write to the inmate and they don't visit. They are not listed with the DOC as next of kin or emergency contacts. In other words, those family members don't exist, and because they don't exist, the DOC can do whatever they want to do with that body. They don't have to order an autopsy. They don't have to do investigations. Sometimes death certificates are issued, sometimes they are not. The second category I want to discuss are those families who do exist, but out of sheer ignorance and laziness fall victim to a DOC tactic that's used on them to get them to give up control of the body, so that that control stays in the hands of the DOC. It would look like this, and it works like this. When an inmate dies, the next of kin or the person designated by that inmate as the emergency contact is called and told that the inmate has died. They're not going to give you much information in that first phone call, but eventually they're going to call you back and they're going to say something like this: Mrs. Smith, we're so sorry for your loss. Your son was very well liked by many here at the prison. We know that these deaths can be a shock and an economic hardship on those when they happen suddenly like this. If you would like us to take care of the funeral arrangements or burial issues and circumstances surrounding those, we'll be happy to do that for you. To the untrained ear, this offer sounds great, especially if you don't have the money to handle the arrangements. So Mrs. Smith says something to this effect: Yes, oh yes, I would appreciate your help very much. I have some money I can put towards the expense, but it won't be enough. Yes, I would like your help. The DOC then will tell her that they're going to email or fax to her a form that they need her to sign and send back to them, authorizing them to handle the arrangements. But those arrangements are not spelled out on that form. And once she signs that form and sends it back to the DOC, she has, right then and there, lost all rights to her son, meaning she cannot request his medical records, she cannot have his personal property or any money that may have been on his books. She cannot attend a funeral service to view her son, and she may or may not be told where her son is buried. If the DOC cremates a body, they may or may not send the cremains to the family. And if they agree to do so, families don't know what they should require of the DOC to prove to them that those cremains that they are receiving are in fact the cremains of their loved one. Let's look at statement number 2. According to bidding documents, the state wants the cheapest wood box and the most inexpensive grave liners to cut down on an expense that costs taxpayers in the state of Missouri $62,000 a year. Well, not all deceased inmates are buried. Most are cremated. DOCs prefer cremation to remove the possibility of body exhumation for further investigation or autopsy. Basic cremation costs, depending on what state you live in, average $1,100 or less. Families have no idea how to negotiate these costs or what services to access in order to do so to retain control of the deceased. If a DOC knows that a family is in the process of securing these services themselves in order to keep control of the body, DOCs can threaten families with cremation without their authorization if they don't pick up the body within X number of hours. I want you to know that this is a strong-arm tactic used to get families to turn over control. Don't buy into it. Only when an inmate has died of a contagious disease are they authorized to dispose of the body within hours if the family doesn't do so. In all other circumstances, families can make the necessary arrangements within a reasonable amount of time without fear of retaliation and harassment from the DOC. They merely don't know how. The Institute can teach you how to accomplish these things. Statement 3. When a prisoner has no family, the state pays for disposing of the remains. I've explained this already, but let me add one more comment. When a DOC keeps control of a deceased inmate body, they can do whatever they want to do with that body. They can cremate it, they can bury it, they can authorize a full body donation to some medical research or hospital organization, or they can donate it to the body farm, or they can authorize tissue, bone, and organ donation. So while DOCs are stating they've spent thousands upon thousands of dollars disposing of deceased inmates, understand they can get rid of these bodies in many different ways that cost them little to nothing. Statement 4. With more prisoners serving more time, states such as Missouri are grappling with more inmate deaths. Serving more time doesn't necessarily have anything to do with more deaths. More inmate deaths can be a direct result of inadequate medical and mental health care delivery, which can certainly contribute to suicides and fast-track progression of treatable diseases, such as asthma, diabetes, and heart problems, which aren't adequately treated at all. Statement 5. As the state's bidding documents note, as the offender population ages, the expenses associated with offender deaths increases. This is only true if the inmate and his family members do not have the correct medical documents in place that keep control and authority of certain medical decisions with the family members for the benefit of the inmate and control of the inmate's body with the family upon death. The Institute provides these documents for inmates and their families and the needed information and education that goes with them. Statement 6. In 2015, Missouri officials say 104 inmates died behind bars. Of those, the remains of 55 were not claimed by family. That number could increase. There are 1,400 plus incarcerated offenders over the age of 60. I'm speaking now to you family members and friends of inmates that are over 55 in whatever state you live in. You need to get these medical documents in place and you need to know how to use them. When they're in place, DOCs cannot perform certain tests without your authorization if the inmate is unable to speak for himself. If that inmate can't speak clearly on his own, when these medical documents are in place, they prevent DOCs and medical personnel from taking an inmate off of life support without your permission. Let me take this one step further. This doesn't just apply to inmates 55 and older. These documents should be in place for any inmate of any age in any jail, in any prison, in any state in this country. If your 18-year-old kid is in jail, you need these documents in place. If you have a loved one of any age, anywhere, you need these documents in place. And your failure to get them in place puts you at the mercy of the system, and they can pull the wool over your eyes very, very easily, and you won't know how bad it is until it gets worse. Statement 7. Corrections officials will listen to family members if they express a preference on what they want done with the relatives. The department typically takes into account the wishes of family members, offenders, and their religious beliefs when making the determination of cremation or burial. This will not change when a contract is in place. In 4 words, don't count on it. They may ask you what your wishes are. The reality is they don't care. The question and their listening is merely window dressing, and that's all it is. You will have no way of checking on it or overseeing whether or not they actually did what you requested in the first place. Because the reality is, if you gave up your control of the deceased, you have no say-so in the first place about anything surrounding him. Statement 8. As for a headstone, it depends on how much a prisoner had in his or her personal prison bank account, which translates to this. If the inmate had no money on his account, then he gets no headstone. He may have his inmate number on a rock in a field somewhere. Statement 9. The department does pay for a marker if it chooses burial, which again points directly to what I stated previously. DOCs prefer cremation. If they opt for burial markers, those burial markers can virtually be on anything. They can be on a cross, they can be on a rock, they can be on a stone laid into the ground with the inmate number on them. In conclusion, to avoid the problems associated with an inmate's declining health due to inadequate health care and death, and the issues that I've highlighted in this video, you have got to have these documents in place, and you have to know how to use them. The Institute supplies both the documentation and the know-how. I don't know how differently or in how many different ways I can get the point across to you families and friends of inmates. Without the documents and the know-how, get your seatbelt on. You thought incarceration was bad enough. Wait until you're subjected to the tricks and traps of the DOCs when your loved one dies. It'll rock your world. Life will never be the same. If you need confirmation of this as a fact, I encourage you to access the videos on our website of family members whose loved ones died. Again, you can read the full news article I've referenced today in this video, as well as the transcript of this video on our blog that you can access through our website at www.wrongfuldeathinstitute.com. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. Call with any questions or concerns you may have. We're here to educate you and to help your loved one. Thanks again.